Today, we're diving into one of the most mysterious and controversial texts in all of history, the Book of Enoch.
And that right there is the central mystery, isn't it? How does a book go from being beloved, even considered sacred, to being completely forbidden? What was so dangerous inside its pages that it had to be scrubbed from history for an entire millennium? To figure that out, we've got to go back to the beginning, back to a time when this book was anything but lost. You see, long before it got its bad reputation, this book was everywhere. Early believers read it, they shared it, they valued it. But that popularity was actually part of the problem, because its wild descriptions of fallen angels would eventually tick off some of the most powerful people in the early church. Eventually, it was slapped with the label Apocrypha. And what's so fascinating is that today we think of apocryphal as meaning, fake or not true. But originally, it came from the Greek word for hidden. It meant a text was so profound, so sacred, that maybe it wasn't for everybody. Over time, though, that meaning twisted into something more suspicious, even heretical. And this timeline just shows you what a roller coaster this book has been on. I mean, think about it. It was written centuries before Jesus. Then it gets condemned by church leaders. And then, poof, it just vanishes from the Western world. For more than 1,000 years, it's like a ghost. It wasn't until 1773 that a Scottish explorer found these perfectly preserved copies in Ethiopia. And then in 1821, it finally gets translated into English, and all its secrets come flooding back into the modern world.
So what was the story that caused all this drama? Okay, let's get to the juicy part, the absolute heart of the controversy, the tale of the Watchers. It all starts right here. The Book of Enoch paints this picture of a group of angels, these heavenly beings called the Watchers, and they're looking down from above, and they become just completely consumed with lust for human women.
And get this wasn't some accident or a slip-up. No, this was a conscious plan, a full-on rebellion against how things were supposed to be. They literally said to each other, let's go down there and take wives for ourselves.
And we're not talking about just a handful of rogue angels here. This was a whole operation. 200 of them, led by this figure named Semjaza. They all gathered on a mountain and swore a pact, an oath, to see this thing through, no matter what. And the consequences, well, they were massive, literally. The children born from these unions were not human. They were giants. And the book gives their height as 3,000 ells. Now, that's an ancient measurement, but basically, these things were unbelievably huge. These giants had a bottomless appetite. They ripped through everything humanity had, all the crops, the livestock, all the resources. And when that ran out, they turned on humans themselves. The book says they started devouring people and drinking their blood. It was absolute chaos.
But the damage wasn't just physical. The fallen angels also started leaking forbidden knowledge from heaven. One angel, Azazel, taught humans how to make weapons, swords, shields, the art of war. Others taught them about makeup and jewelry, about charms and enchantments, astrology, all this secret knowledge that, according to the book, just corrupted humanity even more. Now, as explosive as that story is, and believe me, it is, it's not even the whole book. It's actually just one part of a much bigger, much grander vision.
The real main character of the book is Enoch himself. He's this ancient prophet who, the story goes, gets taken up into the heavens, and there, angels give him a personal guided tour of the entire universe. He gets to see how everything works. And the things he sees are just mind-blowing. He describes seeing the actual throne of God in a house made of crystal and surrounded by fire. He sees the storehouses for thunder and stars, the mechanics of the sun and moon. He even sees the 4 pillars holding up the sky, and a terrifying fiery abyss, the prison built for those fallen angels. So you might be listening to all this and thinking, okay, this sounds like a wild fantasy novel, but what if I told you that this so-called lost book's fingerprints are all over texts that are way more familiar? Let's dig into its surprising influence.
This is the crucial part. Even though it didn't make the final cut for the Bible, its influence is undeniable. Seriously, scholars have pointed out over 100 phrases, ideas, and concepts in the New Testament that seem to have their roots right here, in the Book of Enoch.
And we're not just talking about vague ideas. It gets way more direct than that. The New Testament's Book of Jude quotes directly, almost word for word, from the Book of Enoch. It even names Enoch as the prophet who said it. It's an absolutely stunning, direct link between the Lost Book and the official canon. For centuries, a lot of critics just wrote this book off as a fake, something made up much later by Christians. But then, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. And guess what they found in those caves? Fragments of 10 different manuscripts of Enoch, all written in Aramaic. It was the ultimate proof. This book was ancient. It existed long before Jesus was even born.
And the early Christian leaders, they absolutely knew it, and they used it. The Epistle of Barnabas straight up calls it scripture. You've got all these big names, Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, Tertullian. All of them referenced Enoch's ideas in their own writings. For the first few centuries of Christianity, this book was a part of the conversation. It was a big deal.
So, all of this leads us to the final showdown, the big question. What is this book? Is it divinely inspired scripture, or is it an ancient, incredibly influential story? This is the puzzle of the Book of Enoch. It claims to be the words of a biblical patriarch who lived thousands of years ago, but scholars date it to much, much later. It presents itself as a literal account of heaven, but it was deemed too hidden and then too heretical for official scripture. The book is just caught between what it claims to be and what history shows us it is. So here's the takeaway. The Book of Enoch is a paradox. Its story about an angelic rebellion was maybe just too explosive, too detailed, and its origins were too mysterious for it to make the final cut. And yet, its ideas about angels, demons, the final judgment, and the cosmos had already seeped into the very foundations of Judaism and Christianity. It's a powerful reminder that a story doesn't have to be official to be influential. It doesn't need to be in the canon to change the world. Which leaves us with one final, fascinating question to think about. What other hidden books and forgotten stories are woven into the fabric of our world, just waiting to be rediscovered?